I never expected my billionaire grandpa to ask, "Is your apartment comfortable?" But then, I stood there, frozen, the words echoing in my mind like a haunting melody. The man who had everything tall, silver-haired, and with a smirk that could command empires, was asking me about a cramped studio nestled in the heart of a city that always felt too big. I blinked, trying to process it. Was he joking? My heart raced. I could feel the weight of his gaze, piercing through me, dissecting my reality. The walls of my apartment were a faded yellow, the paint peeling in places. Mismatched furniture, an old couch inherited from my mom, and a table I found on a street corner. Not exactly the grandeur he was used to. I felt a lump in my throat. My grandpa proudly named the company that's formed skyscrapers. He could breathe life into a room just by stepping inside. But here he was, scrutinizing my little nook. It was absurd yet oddly intimate, like seeing a titan break a facade. If only for a moment. Is it comfortable? Do you feel safe? He leaned closer, and for a heartbeat, a flicker of genuine concern danced in his eyes. Caught me off guard. This man, who could buy islands, was worried about my little corner of the world. I took a shaky breath, my hands trembling. The silence stretched, heavy and taut. A memory surged, the day we learned to fish by the lake. He taught me, patiently unhooking wriggling minnows, laughing as I squealed. I wanted to be brave, to impress him. Yet here I was, feeling smaller than I ever had. I glanced around, desperate to shield my vulnerability. The scent of old books and cheap ramen clung to the air. What could I say? That I was terrified every day? That my dreams felt like whispers lost in a storm? I thought of my mom murmuring softly about sacrifices, about how time had worn her down. With every heartbeat, I could feel the tension growing. Did he know? Did he see the cracks beneath my surface? Before I could muster an answer, the door creaked open, and my roommate, Amy, rushed in. Her expression a mixture of confusion and urgency. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, my phone buzzed violently on the tablean emergency notification flashing across the screen. My stomach turned. It felt wrong, like a storm was brewing, ready to unleash chaos. I glanced back at my grandpa, eyes wide with a mix of expectation and worry. "Is it safe?" he asked again, this time his voice low. I didn't want to answer. I could feel the walls closing in, secrets impending beyond my grasp. I wanted to shout, to scream for clarity, to pull my thoughts together. Engagements, disappointments, truths, were they entwined in this moment? But before I could respond, everything began to tilt. An eruption of sound and emotion colliding around us. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sirens wailed like banshees outside, a cacophony merging with my wild thoughts. I felt the urgency in the air shift, a fragile tension crackling between my grandpa and me, a world apart despite the thin wall that separated our realities. Amy's eyes darted from me to him, awareness dawning with each passing second. A silent question hanging between us and accident downtown. She breathed, her voice low yet laced with the sharpness of fear. "There's an evacuation. They need people to clear the area, and there's been a report of gunfire." The words hung heavy in the air, dark and suffocating. My heart dropped. I could see my grandpa's expression harden, his brow creasing into a storm of worry mixed with determination. Beneath all his wealth and bravado, he felt the desire to protect a quality that hadn't escaped the years, untouched by the cold grip of wealth. Without a word, he pulled out his phone, his fingers flying over the screen. I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. This man who could shape worlds with a mere thought was now just another person caught off guard by chaos. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance between us. But this was my emotional maze. How could I invite him in? And what about you? Amy asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It was pointed, protective, a hint of challenge underlined with concern. I sensed the tension build, her instinct tugging at the corners of my turmoil. She was fiercely loyal, fiercely brave. I hesitated. They were both looking at me, expectation coloring the air, their gazes both unervingly familiar and starkly unfamiliar. They'll go with you, Grandpa. We can leave together. He paused, an uncharacteristic vulnerability flashing through his steely demeanor. The grandfather I knew, unbreakable, imposing, was now just a man caught in a moment of fear for those he cared about. No, he asserted with a firmness that pierced my heart. This is not the time. You need to stay here in safety. I can't. I won't lose you too. It felt like daggers, his words anchoring me in my own helplessness. I had spent years feeling like a shadow of the life he built, and now when disaster struck, I was shoved back into that shadow, even here, even now. I don't want you to go. You can't leave me with all of this, I faltered, gesturing helplessly at the walls that seemed to close in around us. You don't understand. The fear lurked around the edges of my words, fed by the memories of my mother's struggles, of sacrifices cloaked in silence. His gaze softened, but his resolve remained unwavering. I understand more than you think, Ava. I've built everything built this Lafido protect you. I can't let fear take that away. But how could I convince him that fear was already my constant companion? That every day I wrestled with a weight that felt insurmountable? Amy took a step closer to me, her hand finding mine, a tether amidst the chaos swirling around us. We can face this together, just like you showed me when we first moved in. And if anything, we'll find a way to get out. Her words became a balm, bittersweet yet soothing. I glanced at my grandfather, my heart a maelstrom of longing and fear. The sirens continued to wail, reminders of a world spinning out of control. But so many things remained unsaid, secrets yet to manifest, dreams yet to grasp. As the tension lay thick in the air, the emergency alert on my phone buzzed again. I pulled it up, my heart racing, my hands shaking. What if it was worse than we feared? What if everything changed in mere moments? We should leave, I urged again, but deep inside, I feared what lay outside even more than the safety of this little room. And just like that, a new message filtered through, bringing my heart to an abrupt halt. It was a picture of my mother's introduction to a truth I never thought I would confront, a message that could unravel decades of silence. Your mom wants to see you, it read. She has something important to tell. I raised my eyes to my grandfather, his expression a mix of concern and understanding. That flicker of vulnerability glimmered again, but this time, it held the weight of unspoken history. And just like that, our lives teetered on the edge of revelation and unresolved conflict, a glimmer of hope wrapped in shadows of fear. The room felt as if it were closing in on us, a prison and a refuge at once, and I knew with stark clarity that the true storm was just beginning. The moment froze, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken fears. I looked down at my phone, still gripped in my hand, the bright screen illuminating the words that had echoed through my mind like a relentless tide. Your mom wants to see you. My grandfather's eyes darkened at the mention of her name. His protective instincts flared, a silent warning etched across his features. This was more than just a request. It was a breach into a past we both carried, one that had never been resolved. Ava, are you sure this is something you want? His voice was strained, a mixture of concern and a desperate need to shield me from the pain that lingered like a specter. I don't know, I admitted, the uncertainty clawing at my insides. Would meeting her drag me into the abyss of all that had been buried? Or would it finally bring closure? What if she's asking for you to protect her? Grandpa's words were heavy with unspoken history. I was struck by the thought, the idea that my mother, who had once slipped out of reach, might have shifted the blame of abandonment onto me. I wasn't sure I could bear that weight again. Amy's hand tightened around mine, a grounding presence amidst the storm of emotions. Whatever happens, you're not alone. Her eyes shone with fierce encouragement, urging me to rise above the fears that threatened to swallow me whole. I had always felt a void where the maternal bond was supposed to be. Could this be a chance to fill it, or would it just deepen the wound? Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed outside, jolting me from my reverie. The sirens wailed in a cacophony that mingled with my mounting anxiety, collapsing walls in my mind. That's it, we need to get out of here. Now. I cleared my throat, urgency coloring every syllable. The chaos outside mirrored the turmoil inside, each pulse of sound sending a new jolt of fear through me. Grandpa was unyielding, his gaze flitting back and forth between Amy and me. This could be very dangerous. I need to protect you. In that moment, I felt the weight of generations of fear and insistence collide. But who protects us from you? I missed the shocked look on his face, too engulfed in my surge of pent-up frustration. I was scared to confront my mother, but the thought of barricading myself against him felt equally terrifying. Ava, he stepped toward me, but I took a step back, grounding myself in that little space where I could reclaim my voice, my autonomy. You can't keep me locked in like this. I'm not a child anymore. His eyes widened as if I had thrust a knife into old wounds, exposing them under the harsh light of the kitchen. This is not about you being a child. His voice rose but cracked, revealing the trembling shell he was struggling to maintain. It's about surviving, about keeping you alive. I swallowed hard, feeling the knot in my throat. But you're not the only one who's scared. I've lived with my fears daily, feeling like I've been living in your shadow. I need to face her. I don't want to be that scared girl anymore. The room swelled with silence, both of us grappling with the echo of buried emotions that lay heavy upon us. Finally, he whispered, "Then we face her together." His words melted the tension, forging a fragile bridge between our tumultuous pasts, but the reality of the situation still loomed ominously. I looked at Amy, who nodded, her reassuring presence igniting a small flicker of hope. "Okay?" I breathed, a mix of fear and resolve rising in my chest like a tide. "We can try." Steeling myself, I pulled open the door, the rush of wind bringing the sense of chaos and adventure. On the other side of the threshold, the world felt different, vibrant, and raw. But then, just as I thought the worst part was behind me, the piercing wail of a siren drew closer, cutting through the air and my resolve. Then it happened. The street exploded into chaos in front of a crowd of panicked individuals. A splintering of emotions as a flash of movement caught my eye. A figure emerged, wild-eyed with desperation. Through the chaotic haze, recognition hit me like ice water. It was a woman, long hair flying behind her, and my heart sank as I realized this familiar ghost was none other than my mother. She looked lost but then found my gaze, and with one hysterical cry of my name, she sprinted towards me. So many emotions collided within my chest: relief, anger, longing. I felt confused, torn between the fear of the storm outside and the tempest within. The world narrowed down to this moment, and I had no idea how everything would unravel from here, but deep within, I knew one thing. I was finally about to confront the truth as she reached me. Her eyes wide with unshed tears, the air crackled with electricity, the sirens howling their relentless song. "Ava, I need to explain." Suddenly, my past rushed forward to meet me, just as the future threatened to slip out of my grasp. And when the truth finally came crashing down, I feared it would take everything I had worked to build along with it. The air was thick with tension as my mother stood before me, her figure a chaotic blend of desperation and unresolved wounds. "Ava, I need to explain." Her voice trembled under the weight of unshed tears, and my heart raced as the maelstrom of emotions swirled inside Mirleaf. Anger, longing, fear. I felt caught between the hope of reunion and the reality of betrayal. "Explain what?" I blurted, the words spilling out with an edge of bitterness. "Why you left? Why you seemed to forget me?" I wanted answers, the kind that would soothe the bruises from the abandonment. Yet part of me feared that the truth she harbored could cut deeper than the absence itself. She stammered, glancing nervously over her shoulder at the chaos erupting around us. The cries of the crowd were swallowed by the increasing wail of sirens, an unnerving reminder that the world outside our tiny bubble felt relentless and menacing. "It's not safe here. Please, can we talk somewhere else? Why should I trust you?" My voice was shaky, but the anger shielded me from the fear that clawed at my insides. You weren't there when I needed you the most. Why now? The hurt in her eyes twisted something inside me, a painful recognition of just how fractured our relationship had become. I never stopped thinking about you, Ava. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I had my reasons. Reasons? I interrupted, my heart racing faster than my thoughts could race to catch up. Is that what you call it? You have no idea how it felt to grow up without you. I took a step back, shaking my head as anger bubbled beneath the surface. My entire life, I wondered what I did to deserve being left behind. She flinched at the accusation, and for a moment, I saw the pain in her eyes morph into something akin to guilt. You didn't do anything, sweetie. You deserved better, and I was just so scared. Suddenly, my grandfather stood by my side, his protective presence anchoring me. Ava, we can't afford to lose sight of the danger, a danger that is all around us. My mother interjected, panic rising in her voice. Ava, I swear I'm not here to hurt you. But if they find me, if they realize that they'll come after both of us. Couldn't let them take you too. That's why I left. My pulse quickened as I absorbed her desperation, wonder and doubt battling for dominance. What could she possibly mean? Was it all true? Every whisper of fear that had knitted itself into my childhood dreams? I turned to my grandfather, searching his face for answers that felt just out of reach. What does she mean? He hesitated, his eyes darting between us as if weighing the truth against the potential for further devastation. This history is deeper than you know, Ava, he finally said, his voice a hushed urgency among the chaos surrounding us. There are things about your mother's past, things I protected you from. Protected me? I laughed incredulously, a spark of bitterness gifting my voice an ache I didn't want to show. Keeping me in the dark wasn't protection. It was a prison. The ground beneath me felt unstable as the crumbling walls of my understanding began to shift. Suddenly, the shuffling crowd felt like a distant echo, the street lights flickering uncertainly like the flame of hope I desperately clung to, unsure if it would guide me or burn me whole. Ava, listen to her. Grandpa placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his grip both comforting and grounding yet filled with unshakable fear. Sometimes we protect those we love by telling them less than the full truth. But your mother, she's not the enemy here. Behind us, panic gave way to screams as a group of officers charged forward, their eyes scanning the crowd with fierce intent. I felt a jolt of terror as my mother's face went pale, the fear of recognition sweeping across her features. Please, she whispered, grabbing my hands, her grip surprisingly strong amidst my doubts. We need to go. I can't just abandon everything. I protested, my heart torn between the past, cracking open like a long-ignored wound, and the present, which felt a breath away from spiraling into chaos. Just as I began to process it all, the officers shouted for everyone to clear the area. My mother's eyes darted nervously, urgency etched across her face. They're coming for me, Ava. If they find me, please, we have to run. I glanced at Grandpa, a muted question lingering in the air. He nodded grimly, his expression more pained than I had ever seen it. Let's go. Just trust us. Before I could respond, my mother tugged at my arm, her desperation bleeding into my veins. We sprinted together through the crowd, my heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos surrounding us. Behind us, voices shouted warnings, and footsteps thudded against the pavement like the beat of an impending storm. In those frantic moments, I felt a mix of fear and adrenaline surge as the truth of my fractured family threatened to rip apart my heart, while illuminating shadows lurking in every corner of my mind. I had been waiting for this memento, reclaim my past, reconnect with that missing part of myself, but I hadn't anticipated the danger it would bring as we dashed around the corner into an alley. Breathing heavily, my truth felt closer yet more corrupted. My mother clutched my hand tightly, looking over her shoulder, her voice breaking through the air. Ava, if we make it out of this, if there's still a chance for us, I promise I'll tell you everything. Before I could respond, a thunderous crash echoed behind us, freezing us in place. My heart dropped as I turned to see shadows looming closer, obscured by the flickering lights. In that instant, the fragility of our new beginning hung in the balance, and I realized we were no longer just confronting the past. We were entangled in a present filled with choices, uncertainty, and the specter of dangers yet untold. The moment hung like a fragile ornament balancing on the edge of a delicate branch, with the air thickening around us as impending doom lurked just out of reach. My mind raced while fragments of my mother's confession buzzed like a swarm of angry bees, stinging and overwhelming all sense of rational thought. The eruption of sound behind us had startled a knot of memories and secrets that had long been locked away, a cacophony of regret, anger, and the yearning for answers that had once felt out of reach. "Follow me," my mother urged, and without hesitation, I let her lead the way, navigating our way deeper into the shadow-choked alley. Chaotic thoughts spiraled in my mind. Was she truly here to help me, or was danger the only legacy shed left? An unpredictable turmoil churned within me, the dual struggle for safety and truth warring as we crashed through time-worn cardboard boxes and scattered debris. Just as we rounded a corner, a figure emerged from the darkness, tall and imposing, clad in a deep trench coat that seemed to absorb the very light around it. My heart dropped as recognition slithered through me. It was Sean, a familiar face from my past, once a childhood friend turned elusive acquaintance. "Ava?" he said, voice low, as if he sensed the tension saturating the air. "What's happening?" "Ava, we don't have time for this," my mother interjected. But Sean stepped forward, his eyes narrowing in concern. "Wait, you need help," he insisted. "I saw what was happening back at the protest. You're in danger, both of you. You can't go back. Let me help." A glimmer of hope surfaced inside me, wrapping gently around the wound of abandonment. Sean had always been the kind one, the one to catch me when I fell, both metaphorically and literally. Now he stood in front of me like an unexpected lighthouse in a tempest, a figure who might provide solace amid the storm. "I can take you to my place," he offered, eyes darting back to the street where shadows danced chaotically, the clamoring officers growing closer. "Well, figure it out from there." I felt my mother's grip tighten around my wrist, her unspoken turmoil radiating through her touch. She was torn between the desperate need to flee and the instinct to trust her last remaining tether. Yet the clock was ticking, and each passing second demanded action. "Okay," I said rashly, glancing back at my mother, who now wore an expression that helped stem the tide of my fear. Her face shifted, resolve emerging as she nodded slowly. Sean led us through winding passages, the flickering streetlights illuminating fleeting glances of trepidation in our faces. The sound of pursuing footsteps resonated off the damp walls, echoes of my own scattered thoughts urging to make sense of it all. I could feel the weight of questions pressing against me, demanding answers, yet the thrill of movement kept me alive, if only for a little while longer. When we reached his apartment, a small, worn building nestled unassumingly between towering structures, the air felt different, an infusion of safety wrapped in a familiar warmth. He pushed the door open with urgency, ushering us inside as he quickly closed it behind us. Cutting off the chaotic world that threatened to swallow us whole, he ushered us to the cramped living room, his eyes darting around as if assessing our safety. Between the mismatched furniture and minimalist decor, I could feel a sense of calm wash over me, laced with nostalgia of simpler times before the weight of the world had settled on my shoulders. "Stay here," he said, almost sternly, as he vanished into the adjacent kitchen, leaving my mother and me in a silent standoff. "What are we doing here?" she murmured, her voice laced with uncertainty, entwining with the vulnerability that had seeped back into our interaction. "Trying to escape," I replied, my throat tight. "But Ava," she interrupted, her eyes glistening like shattered glass reflecting suffering. "If we make it through this, I want you to know that my heart has always been with you. I was wrong to leave." Before I could respond, Sean returned with bottled water and simple snacks. "We need to stay quiet," he said, handing us each a bottle. "This building is old, but solid. They shouldn't find us here." I took a sip, the cool liquid soothing the knot in my throat. "Thank you, Sean," I said, suddenly reminded of how genuine kindness could pierce through the darkness, illuminating even the darkest corners of despair. He rubbed the back of his neck, gaze flickering nervously to my mother before returning to me. Care about you, Ava. I always have. My heart raced at his confession, and in that instant, amidst the tension, hope flickered within me, fragile but alive, until the reality of my mother's situation settled in like heavy fog, suffocating the warmth that had ignited. What do you know about my mother? I asked Sean, my voice breaking the too quiet air. What is she hiding? I don't know everything, he admitted, eyes now locked onto my mother, his expression shifting to one of concern. But I know she's connected to something deep and dangerous. You deserve to know the truth, Ava, and you need to protect yourself. They exchanged glances that hinted at a world unknown to me, an unseen bond forged in secrets and silence. An icy current of fear coursed through me, mingled with resentment at the encroaching reality. What truth? I pressed, desperation biting at my voice. What are you not telling me? Just then, the shrill sound of sirens sliced through the air outside, growing closer, more furious. My breath caught, shadows gathering at the edges of the room, creeping like tendrils of untold stories eager to be unveiled. Quick, Sean urged, pointing to a small door hidden behind a stack of boxes. There's an exit through the back alley. We need to move now. My mother hesitated, torn between the track of loyalty to the past and the urgent need for survival. As the noise intensified, an overwhelming surge of fear and clarity washed over me, intertwining with fragmented memories of unanswered questions. I can't keep running, I shouted, my heart thundering in my chest. I need to know. But as the sirens grew closer, the choices ahead of me felt like crumbling cliffs. Take the leap toward truth or pull myself back from the unknown. I stood suspended in time. The fracture within my family echoed painfully, and as the future loomed, the weight of unanswered questions threatened to swallow me whole. With my heart still pounding in my chest, a tension hummed in the air as Sean's urgent warning collided with the whirlwind of my own indecision. Questions hung heavily around us, twisted like vines, each one a potential barrier to moving forward, toward the truth I so desperately craved. Ava, my mother whispered, her voice trembling, we can't just throw ourselves into uncertainty. The flicker of fear crept back into her eyes, pulling me back toward the shadows of my childhood. The echoes of her failures whispered around us, taunting me with the very things I sought to understand. I can't keep on running, Mom, I snapped, feeling the heat of defiance flare within me. What good has that ever done? I need to know who I am, who you are. The walls seemed to shudder in response, bearing witness to the storm brewing inside me. I wasn't just asking for information. I was seeking a lifeline, a bridge over the chasm of hurt that had formed between us. Sean's brow furrowed as he registered the conflict erupting, uncertainty playing on his face like a thundercloud. Ava, there's a reason your mother kept her past hidden from you. It's complicated. The growing roar of sirens sliced through the air, closer now, sending shivers along my spine. The urgency pressed against my chest, each thud of my heart echoing the weight of expectation. My mother's gaze filled with an unspoken plea, Sean's filled with concern, and mine, a desperate yearning for clarity. Suddenly, I felt an idea settle over me, a path I hadn't considered before. What if I hesitated? The fear of the unknown threading through my resolve. What if we face it together? The truth might allow us to heal. My mother's pained expression softened for the briefest moment, a flicker of hope igniting beneath the layers of despair that had shaped her existence. Ava, she began, but then stopped herself, the tremor in her voice a testament to her internal battle. We don't have time for this, Sean interjected, glancing at the door. The sirens had transformed into harsh shouts, the swell of chaos intensifying outside. You both need to decide now. We can take the back exit or we can confront whatever is going on out there. Is there even safety in confronting it? I asked, feeling the gravity of each word as they fell from my lips, echoing my trepidation. They'll be here, Sean vowed, his voice firm. I won't let you face it alone. At that moment, the uncertainty was tangible, like smoke swirling around us, testing our will. I looked at my mother, searching for the woman I once knew, the one with laughter in her eyes and a soothing touch. I want to understand, Mom, I urged gently. I want us to be a family again. Her emerald eyes glistened with unspilled tears, and as she met my gaze, I could see years of hurt battling against fierce love. Finally, she took a deep breath, the kind that comes just before a leap into the unknown. If we're to do this, we need to trust one another, she said, her voice steadying that I am willing to try. I replied, my heart racing, a flicker of hope rising amid the turmoil. Together, without waiting for anyone to second-guess our resolve, I pushed forward, ready to unlock the door to our past. But just as my fingers brushed the cold metal handle, a loud crash came from the street, a cacophony of chaos that pierced through the adrenaline-fueled silence. Panic flared in Sean's eyes, and my mother's resolve suddenly faltered. We can't just walk out there. They're coming for us, she exclaimed, terror lacing her voice. Wait, let's think this through, Sean urged, hesitating. We don't know what we're walking into. Hopefully, the truth, I said, feeling the embers of determination ignite. We can't let fear decide our fate. Then, just as the final echoes of conflict settled around us, the sound of a door being kicked open echoed through Sean's apartment, a harsh announcement of the chaos demanding entry. A brief moment of chill swept through me as a voice roared from the entrance. We know you're in there. Ava, come out now. My breath hitched, the words feeling like a physical blow. The reality of the moment crashed down with the force of a tidal wave, and I turned to see Sean's eyes widen, realizing who was stepping into our world of uncertainty. Who are they? I whispered, panic lacing my words. Before Sean could answer, another voice joined the clamor, smooth yet menacing. You don't want to make this difficult, sweetheart. It was a voice that rang with the sinister familiarity of betrayal, one I hadn't expected. But now, the pieces of my chaotic past twisted, threatening to unravel everything. As the realization sunk in, the haunting dread of lineage met a sharp turn of family secrets spilling out in the most unthinkable way, ensnaring me in a web woven with betrayal and the longing for the truth. The adrenaline coursed through me like a wildfire, igniting every nerve ending as I struggled to comprehend what was happening. The voices outside echoed with an ominous blend of authority and ruthlessness, laying bare the truth I had long feared. Me pursuit of understanding had precipitated an attack, and the very people I sought to connect with were caught in the flames. Those are family, Sean whispered, his voice barely more than a breath of air. His gaze darted to the door, then back to my mother and me, horror painted across his features. 1,000 questions thundered in my mind, but one burned brighter than the rest. How far had my mother gone to shield me from this? My mother's face drained of color as she tightened her grip around my wrist, desperation mingling with instinctual protectiveness. Ava, you need to listen to me. This isn't just about the truth. It's about survival. Her eyes, once filled with love, now were glassy with fear. What do you mean? I demanded, the heart-wrench of betrayal squeezing my chest as memories flashed through my mind, hints of secrets buried in whispered conversations and stolen glances between my mother and those who still lurked in the shadows. They want to control you, she continued, her voice steadier now, but laced with an urgency that made my skin crawl. They always wanted you as part of their world, to perfect whatever twisted legacy you've inherited. I recoiled as the implications clawed at my insides. But why? I'm not a part of their life. He chose you. I know, and that's why they're angry, she said, her breath hitching as the reality sank deeper. You need to trust me, Ava. We need to find a way out of here. The demands of the outside world pressed heavily against the door, the awareness of being hunted taking root in each of us. It felt surreal, a scene ripped straight from a twisted drama, and here I was stranded between the pull of my darkening lineage and the soothing light of my mother's love. Is there another way? I asked Sean, my heart crashing against my ribs as I searched his eyes for a glimmer of hope. He shook his head, his brow furrowed with concern. The only options are to confront them or hide. But hiding, it might sell you into a different form of captivity. At that moment, uncertainty wrapped around me like a fog. Was there even a choice? My mother had turned away from her past to protect me. Yet here it was, knocking at our door. We can fight. I can help, Sean offered, resolve blooming against the odds. No, my mother interjected, panic spiking in her tone. Fighting them is not an option. They're ruthless. I am not going to let them take you from me. I insisted, the words breaking free as my fingers flexed into fists at my sides. The yearning for confrontation surged within me, the need to take control of my destiny, even if it meant stepping into the abyss of my own bloodline. Just then, the door splintered under the weight of the assault, a loud crack that echoed through the small apartment like a death knell, and as it swung open, the shadows of the world outside poured in. The figures at the threshold loomed larger than life, their faces shrouded with familiarity that sent chills racing up my spine. Among them, a tall figure stepped into the light, a disarming smile hiding a sinister intent. My grandfather. The sudden recognition chilled me to the bone. Ava, he said, his voice smooth and seductive, like honey coating steel. It's time we had a family reunion. The world tilted beneath my feet, an overwhelming rush of panic and dread magnifying my every exhale. A swell of betrayal clawed at my heart. He was the patriarch of the family that I had never known, the one carrying the weight of secrets and expectations I couldn't yet fathom. Stay back, I yelled, clutching my mother's hand as if it were an anchor in a storm. The memories of a family whispered to me through glimpses of my mother's past. But now, I was face to face with the source, the man whose legacy could consume us whole. Easy, Ava. I'm here to bring you home, he replied, an unsettling calm behind his polished facade that shifted the air between us into something sharp and suffocating. You don't need to be afraid. Your future awaits. Sean instinctively stepped in front of us, a shield against the torrent of inherited chaos. An act so brave yet so futile against the powerful family that shielded their own sins with calculated charm. Your future? I echoed, the words bitter on my tongue as the threat loomed over me, closing in like a predator. You can't dictate my life, but I can guide it, he countered, the smile never leaving his lips as he leaned closer, the scent of danger wrapping around me. You belong with us, Ava. You just need to embrace what is rightfully yours. That I felt the air thicken, suffocating under the weight of the expectations thrust upon me, the battle lines already drawn. As much as I longed for the truth and understanding, the heroes in this story were quickly vanishing, replaced by shadows of family ties that threatened my very existence. In that moment, the realization struck me like a bolt of electricity. The chains of fate were tightening around me, and I was teetering on the precipice of a decision that could alter the trajectory of my life forever. Would I step into the light of my inheritance, or would I fight it, risking everything to carve out my own path? The question hung heavy in the air as I took my mother's hand, a plea for unity in our shared turmoil. And then I whispered, barely above a breath, together, Mom, whatever happens, we face it together. But as Sean's determined gaze met mine, I couldn't shake the chilling realization that, in embracing our truth, I had unknowingly sealed our fates in a battle that was only just beginning. The atmosphere shifted as my grandfather's presence consumed the cramped room, a malevolence hidden beneath a veneer of familial affection. I felt the weight of his gaze more than I saw it, each second a test of strength as he evaluated the 2 generations between us. Your mother has always been resistant to our legacy. But you, Ava, he continued, his voice syrupy with condescension, you have a choice. Don't listen to him. Sean interrupted, his presence a steady bulwark against the tide of my grandfather's charisma. You aren't a pawn in some twisted game of power. My grandfather's features contorted briefly with annoyance, then settled back into placidity. I appreciate your concern, young man, but this is not your choice to make. He turned back to me, his smile widening. Join us, and you can help reshape our family's future. You'll have the comfort and security you desire. Comfort? Security? I had spent so long yearning for a sense of normalcy, for a home that felt like my own, and yet here I was, standing on the edge of something darker. An overwhelming sense of suffocation encased me, the walls too close, the weight of my decisions heavy like the burdens my mother had carried for years. I don't want your security, and I don't want your twisted allegiance. I shot back, the words erupting from me like a flame ignited by desperation. What I want is to be free to make my own choices. The shadow of disappointment flickered across his face, and something deep and foreboding settled into the air between us. You misunderstand, Ava. You are free, or at least you will be once you accept who you are. My mother squeezed my hand tighter, the subtle reminder that we were not alone in this fight, even as darkness rose around us. This isn't about who she is, she asserted, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. We've built a life away from that life. My grandfather's gaze shifted to her, the play of emotions along his features revealing layers of intimidation and contempt. A life based on lies. Ava deserves so much more than you can provide. Sean's posture bristled beside me, a shield of pure determination, but I felt a swell of helplessness mix with a flicker of something unexpected. Hope. Before the battle outside our door could escalate, a chink in my grandfather's armor presented itself in the form of his unwavering smile. What if I told you I have an opportunity for you, Ava? He proposed, leaning closer, his words coating every syllable with a rich sweetness. A chance to meet the other members of our family who care for you and want nothing but the best. They can offer you resources, guidance, and friendships you've been yearning for. Friendships, he said. The idea of familial bonds, filled with warmth and acceptance, felt like an elusive dream in a nightmarish landscape of power struggles and deceit. But was it genuine warmth or just another layer of manipulation? My heart wavered between the allure of what could be and the gravitas of what I had known. They'll love you, Ava, as I do, he continued, his entrancing charm almost convincing me. You won't have to struggle anymore. You can let go of the burdens you've been carrying. Stop, I cried, the sudden surge of fear erupting from the chasm of uncertainty opening wide before me. You don't know me. You don't know anything about what I want. Perhaps, he conceded lightly, even as the tension thickened around us. But I can show you what you need. And then the door behind him burst open with a bang, the vibrations reverberating through the air like a drum announcing a crisis. My heart stopped as a group of figures poured in, their silhouettes sharp against the dim light. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face amongst them, feelings of surprise and anguish washing over me like a wave. Leah? I whispered, the name slipping past my lips like a prayer. My cousin stood there, an uneasy expression draped across her features, her eyes darting between Sean, my mother, and my grandfather, grasping the weight of the tension pressing against us. Ava, what's happening? She questioned, fear lining the edges of her brow. Family, my grandfather exclaimed, the exuberance and airiness contrasting sharply with the mounting fear in the room. We've come to welcome you into your true home. But Leah's gaze flickered to mine with confusion, the bond we shared thickening with unspoken words. What do you mean? She pressed, a worried glance falling to her own father beside my grandfather. Isn't Shieva's future is bright here? Leah, my grandfather interrupted smoothly, a master at marionette strings. Come, like I've told her. It's time to embrace what is rightfully yours. And just like that, my world tipped once more, the flickers of hope pushing me into corners darkened by fears of betrayal. Leah's presence fostered both comfort and distress. It was a reminder of family, yet also a harbinger of impending dynamics I could not comprehend. The question hung heavy in the air once more, but this time it pulsated with urgency. How many more faces would I see before I was swept into the darkness of my own legacy? Courage stirred within me as I sought to find my footing, barely holding the cornerstones of my convictions and the trembling breaths of my loved ones surrounding me. The storm of emotions almost swept me away, yet as I stood there, I realized one undeniable truth. If I was to fight, I needed to know my enemy, and sometimes, the fiercest battles were fought within. The air hung heavy with anticipation, and a chill crept into the room that had nothing to do with the oncoming evening. Shadows flickered around us as Leah moved slightly closer, her hand instinctively brushing against Minea's small gesture that somehow filled me with warmth amidst the brewing storm. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone. Not really, even in this maelstrom of manipulation and power plays. Ava, Leah said, her voice trembling slightly, are you okay? What's happening? I thought you were safe out here. There was an earnestness in her expression, one that tugged at my heart. She wasn't just a pawn in this twisted game, she was family. A connection that transcended the darker undertones surrounding us. I don't know, I admitted, the truth spilling from my lips like weakness. I feel trapped, Leah. It's like every choice I make is already decided for me. I could see the worry etched deep into her features, and it made me want to fight harder. We will figure this out, she promised, though her voice wavered, hinting at the uncertain ground we stood on. Whatever he's offering you, don't forget who you are. Her words wrapped around me like a protective cloak, and despite the inferno raging within the confines of my heart, I clung to that sliver of hope. But my grandfather wasn't finished. What I offer is clarity, Ava, freedom from the burdens of misplaced loyalty. You've been taught to resist, but all I see is potential, waiting to be unlocked. His voice coiled around me, seductive and insidious, and I pressed my lips together to stifle the nausea rising in response. Freedom from what? I shot back, emboldened. From my mother? From a life I've built? What kind of freedom traps you into obligations you didn't choose? The answer was clear in his steely gazette, was a freedom that demanded allegiance, tethering me back to a world I wanted to escape. I admire your spirit, he said, his tone oddly affectionate yet frightening at the same time. That is precisely what our family is built on. Strength. I felt Sean shift beside me, his body tense, as though ready to leap into action at a moment's notice. He was my anchor, the calm amidst the chaos, but even his presence couldn't quiet the rumble of uncertainty tumbling through my chest. Leah, you have to understand. I leaned in toward her, searching her eyes for solidarity. This might not be what it seems. It could be a Tropan attempt to pull me into the dark web of our family's legacy. Leah's brow furrowed, apprehension lining her delicate features. But what about the others? The ones who care for you? Her voice softened, a mixture of fear and the desperation to maintain familial bonds ringing clear. Before I could respond, the door swung open once more, this time revealing a formidable presence of me uncle, Ethan, step-slicked hair and leather jacket against the backdrop of this suffocating room. Instantly, the room's atmosphere shifted, a new layer of complexity unfolding within this family drama. Dad, he acknowledged, a smirk creeping onto his lips as he surveyed the scene. Looks like you're trying to convince Ava to join the family circus again. Ethan, my grandfather's voice was laced with irritation. This is not the time for your juvenile remarks. His uncle stepped deeper into the room, his gaze landing on me with a peculiar mix of curiosity and amusement. Honestly, Ava, you should hear him out. You might be surprised at what you can gain. The words swept through the air, like a seed of doubt being planted in the back of my mind. What was it that they wanted from me? It felt like a chess game where I was the unwitting piece, moved around at their leisure. Stay out of this, Ethan, my mother warned, the fierceness in her voice illuminating some of the darkness that had amassed in the corners of the room. This is not a game. This is about Ava's life. At that moment, the smallest flicker of doubt ignited inside me. My grandfather's powerful allure battled the urgency of my mother's resolve. Two worlds clashed inside my heart, and I stood straddling the line between their magnetic pulls. Leah's fingers tightened around mine, as though she sought to ground us both in this swirling tempest. Yet even as I felt the surge of hope from her closeness, fear danced around me like a persistent ghost, whispering of the unknown depths that awaited if I chose the wrong path. As the moments thickened and the tension escalated, my grandfather leaned in closer, his breath warm against my ear, a velvet whisper cloaked in shadows. Imagine, dear Ava, a life without fear, one that offers you everything you've craved. You only need to take a step into your destiny. Reality fell silent as I wavered, swallowed by the paradox of my choices. But just when I thought I had steadied myself amid the swirling chaos, Leah's phone buzzed on the table, vibrating with an urgency that felt dangerously out of place. She started. But I could already see the panic decorating her features. I have to take this. Could be important. With a quick nod of understanding, she stepped back, the moment pulling us apart, and I felt the ground beneath me shift. What if she received news that could change everything? An image of loss flickered through my mind, the idea of her ceasing to be a part of this fight clawing at my chest. And as Leah stepped out of the room, the door creaking ominously behind her, my grandfather's voice unfurled in silken tones, "Ava, my dear, all you need to do is trust me." But trust was the very thing I questioned amidst the gathering storm of familial loyalties and new, unsteady alliances. I could feel the final pieces of my resolve beginning to fracture, the air thick with uncertainty as I faced down the precarious alignment of my future. What awaited me on the other side of this decision? And how deep did the shadows cast by my grandfather's promises run? My heart raced even as a new, sharp dread settled in a revelation waiting to clutch my chest. The kind of revelation that could spin the world around me once more, possibly for the last time. The clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed Leah's departure, the air thickening like a storm gathering strength, ready to break. My grandfather's eyes locked onto mine, a predatory gleam lurking beneath his composed facade. "You'll come with me, Ava. It's time you embrace the legacy I crafted for you." His words settled heavily in the room, echoing against the polished floors and worn furniture. A legacy. What did it mean to inherit a legacy steeped in shadows? Questions swirled in my mind like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind, but amid the confusion, one thought stood clear. I had no desire to be a part of a family defined by power struggles and manipulation. "No," I said, my voice trembling yet steady, a quiet rebellion against the tide of expectation. "I refuse to be a pawn in your game." Strength surged within me, and I turned to Sean, his solid presence grounding me like a firm anchor amidst the chaos. "Whatever they offer me, it's not worth losing my soul." The flicker of surprise crossed my grandfather's face, quickly replaced by a mask of calm. "You think you can turn your back on everything you are? On everything I could provide?" "I'm not turning my back on anything. This isn't who I am," I insisted, letting desperation spill freely into my words. "I fought so hard to become Ava. Not the girl you expect me to be, but someone who defines her own destiny. I don't want your inheritance." Sean's hand brushed my back, a reminder that in this moment, I had support even as the layers of my world unraveled around us. The bond with my mother, with Leah, with my past, felt tender yet sharpened by fear. Just then, Leah re-entered, her expression shadowed by urgency. "Ava, there's something you need to know." Her arrival seemed to slow time, the air growing thick with anticipation. "What is it?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "I received a message from someone close to our familiar warning," she breathed. "They know what's happening, and they intend to put a stop to it. It could be dangerous for any of us to remain here." Her words struck me like a thunderclap, and in that moment, clarity surged through the uncertainty. Maybe this was why I was being pulled toward the light of truth, the kind that could dispel the darkness once and for all. "What do you mean they know?" my grandfather interjected, annoyance sharpening his features. "Our family has always been protected. I don't think you understand how deeply entwined all of this is," Leah replied, her voice steadying with conviction. "And Ava deserves answers that you've hidden from her for far too long." Suddenly, the gravity of the moment coalesced. I turned to my mother, the women tethered by choices. "This is where I stand. If you can't respect that, I'll walk away from you both." A silence fell, a fragile thread stretched taut between us, and within that stillness, time slipped through my fingers like sand. I could feel Leah and Sean beside me, urging me forward, their unwavering belief in me pushing back against doubt. Together, Leah echoed, her hand finding mine, connecting us in this whirlwind of uncertainty. "Whatever it takes to uncover the truth." And those words encased me, wrapping me in courage as my heart surged with the realization that, despite the crumbling world around us, I didn't have to face this alone. But my grandfather's face darkened, a storm brewing behind his calm exterior. "You'll regret this," he warned, the undercurrent of threat lacing his tone. "You may think the truth will set you free, but it has a darker price." "Then let us pay it," I said, my voice unyielding. "We'd rather face the shadows than live our lives in fear." At that moment, a loud crash broke through the charged atmosphere, the door rattling against the frame, and all heads turned toward the sound. With wet, heavy footsteps, more figures spilled into the room. This time they were not alone. A group of officers, clad in uniforms, filled the doorway, and behind them, a taller figure emerged, a stern yet familiar face that sent a shiver down my spine. My father. I had never known the man, only whispers of his name, among hushed tones and flickering shadows of memories. He stood with authority in the doorway, the semblance of a protector reinforced by the determined look etched on his features. Ava, he said, the singular word, a weighty acknowledgement that pulled at the edges of equity. We need to talk. My heart raced from shock and disbelief. Dad? What are you doing here? But my grandfather merely smirked, a chilling expression that suggested this confrontation was exactly what he had anticipated, carefully laid out like some twisted chess game, and we were simply the pawns. You brought them here? He challenged, angling his body toward my father, who stood resolute in the doorway. You think that can stop what's inevitable? Maybe not inevitable, Paul said simply, his eyes cutting through my grandfather's bravado and landing squarely on me. But together, we can finally rid you of your shadows. And in that moment, my heart felt a strange Uniona bloodline I never understood had awakened. The ancient ties of family pulling tighter while defying the darkness that came within them. Sean's grip steadied, Leah's support ignited within me, and I finally found the words. Everyone deserves a choice, I said firmly, looking between the two men who held my life in their hands and to the women beside me who had carried their own burdens, and I choose to fight for the truth. The air shifted, electricity crackling as the cusp of a revolution unfurled before us like smoke dissipating, as the storm of family tensions whirled around us. And in that instant, I knew we were teetering on the edge of unraveling the truth and stitching together a new beginning. Together, Leah whispered, and in that unity, I felt a fierce sense of purpose igniting among us, a rallying cry that shattered through the chaos. And just like that, I understood. I was not alone anymore. I was ready to walk into the storm, to reclaim what was truly mine. Let's find out the price of truth together, I said, turning my gaze defiantly back to my grandfather. And this time I control the narrative. As the cacophony of the tumult erupted again, words anew that changed everything, I knew one thing with every fiber of my being. Hope had flourished in the shadows, and love, if fed with courage, could overcome anything. And where we stood, our collective resolve shimmering brightly against the encroaching dark, it felt as though the shards of our fragmented lives were pulling together, the strength in our bond carving a path forward into an uncertain future, unyielding and eternally powerful. We are not merely the echoes of our past but the promise of tomorrow.